Hey everybody, welcome. Great to have you here. I'm gonna go ahead and give us a minute for everybody's Zoom to get on board, but we would love to know who's here. So go ahead and in that chat button at the bottom, say hello and where you're watching from. Use the drop down little arrow to make sure that you're chatting to everybody. There's all kinds of folks. Great. Kara from Denver, Colorado, Northeast Iowa, Kansas, St. Paul. Great. You probably can notice that we are being joined as well by our winter moccasin making class here in the Blue Building at North House. So we've got a class going on, and Sarah and I thought it would be fun to have a little bit of a Zoom audience. So we invited them to sit in with us. Saginaw, Michigan. Hey, Laura Brown in Grand Marais. Hi, Vienna in Bloomington. Nice to Zoom see you. All right, folks from Wisconsin and Minnesota. Wonderful. We'll give it just a minute here. I can still see people coming in, and I'd love to give people a chance to get situated before we get started. Okay. Minneapolis, soft and gray St. Paul. Red Lake, Ontario. Hello across the border. Great. Hi, Christine. Great. Well, those of you who've been to North House webinars know that it is a tradition to talk about the weather. So I will tell you that it snowed a few inches last night, and it has been crazy windy here, like 40-mile-an-hour gusts that are just have Lake Superior kind of rocking. It's settled down right now, but it's been covered in whitecaps. Very gray. We've had a really terrific snow year. So the piles down on the campus commons are not piles, they are mountains. If you are standing next to the Blue Building, you can almost not see the lake over the Plow Mountains. So we're right in the middle of it and really enjoying a lovely cold winter up here on the North Shore. So, all right, well, it's about time, so we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Jessa Frost. I'm the program director here at North House Folk School. We are located in Grand Marais, Minnesota. We are a school devoted to enriching lives and building community through the teaching of traditional Northern crafts. And we take a really pan-global look at what we think Northern means. And so it means to us crafts from any place where folks are dealing with winter and sorting out what it's like to live in a climate where you have 4 very distinct seasons. And it's an amazing diverse array of crafts have been generated in the northern part of the world. And we are we try to spend time celebrating as many traditions as we can. Let's see, it is the kickoff of Fiber Week here. This is our the annual time of the year that we really focus in on textiles and fiber craft. We have a series of webinars happening. We hope you can join us for lots of them. This is the kickoff. Next Friday, we will have 3 webinars, all kind of back to back in the morning. On Friday the 18th, we'll be joined by a felt maker from Kyrgyzstan, by a Sami textile artist from the Kola Peninsula in Russia, and then by Anamor Sunbo, who is a really celebrated and wonderful craft historian and craft preservationist and in Norway, who joined us last year and is just full of great stories. This year she'll be joining us to talk about spelsow, a particular sheep. So, and then the following week we'll be joined by Laura Brown, one of our resident artisans, talking about quilting. So lots of great storytelling ahead of us during this winter season. But I'm especially excited to be joined by one of our neighbors, really, here in the northern part of Minnesota and Wisconsin, Sarah Agaton House. And I want to talk a little bit about Sarah's background and why we've invited her to be part of the speaker series. But I want a tiny bit of Zoom housekeeping. This is set up as a webinar. So although there are more than 100 people here, you don't get to see all of our smiling boxes. You just get to see the moccasin makers down there in the Blue Building and Sarah and her screen. But we hope that this can be participatory If you have questions or comments, we would love to hear from you. You can put your comments in that handy dandy chat function that so many of you have been saying hello in. If you have questions that you're hoping Sarah can address, we'll take questions at the end, but you can enter your questions at any time in the Q&A. So if you look at the bottom of your screen, there's a little Q&A button. If you click there and put your question in, we won't lose it. In the chat, sometimes because of the scrolling, we just don't want to lose anybody's any questions they're hoping we'll get to. So I think that's all of my housekeeping. I'm really delighted to be joined by Sarah today. Sarah is from Fond du Lac and runs a really remarkable company, Heartberry, that creates all kinds of soft goods and other textiles and home goods and useful things using Anishinaabe design to make modern crafts and items that people want to use and wear and give as gifts. And so I think we, in the craft world at North House here, we talk lots about folk art and about shapes and designs and images and have lots of interesting conversations about who owns those and what cultures are they attached to and what stories do the color choices and the surface design work carry with them, and who gets to be in charge of telling those stories. And if you aren't Norwegian, can you rosemull is a question that often comes up here. And so I wanted to invite Sarah because her work around using designs from her culture, but also inviting conversation around issues of cultural appropriation and around issues of power that come with using and selling craft work, I think is a conversation that's ongoing here and is nice to spread out in this virtual format. So Sarah's been running her business for 7 years. She's been a practicing crafts artist for over 20, and we're so glad you're here. Sarah, take it away.
All right, well, miigwech for that introduction. Bonjour, everyone. Sarah Agaton House, Minowa Naokwe Gijigokwe Indigenous Cause. My Ojibwe name is Naokwe Gijigokwe, and my name is also Sarah Agaton House. Magazine in Dudame, I'm Eagle Clan, Papashka Metagung and Dunjaba. I'm from the Cloquet area of Fond du Lac, Guaba Iganinda, but I live in the village of Sawyer. And Heartberry Jinakadig, Ningi Ujitun. So I am the creator of Heartberry, but also the artist. So I get to call myself a CEO and artist. And I'm really glad to be here. It's really timely that I'm here and I'm watching Biskakwane and Alexandra's class, moccasin making class, while we're talking about this, because it's so right on for the kind of work that I think is really amazing and love to be a part of. So Heartberry started out as really a side hustle. When my kids were little, I wanted to make a little bit of what we call snow pants money, or a little propane money. So I started making and selling beadwork and regalia, sewing quilts, kind of doing whatever I could on the side to really make a little bit of extra money for my family. And what I kind of saw right away was that the demand in our community for our own cultural art was way beyond what I could do on my own. And anybody who's an artist probably has a list to work off, and the list got really, really long. And sort of simultaneous to that, I would get a lot of phone calls kind of late at night, or people dropping by and they'd say, oh, I know this is last minute, but I really need a pair of funeral moccasins for my dad or my uncle. And it became real clear to me that what I needed to be doing was teaching my community and working with my community to really build a community of makers versus me doing the work on my own. Also to that, it's really hard to make money as a beadwork artist, as all beadwork artists know. So I really decided I needed to shift that focus from doing for barter to teaching and creating tools and supporting other people in their making. And really have been super lucky over the last 7 years or so. I probably got to teach over 700 people how to make moccasins, how to do beadwork. And really for me, what that means is that there are 700 families who have a maker in their family. That means, 700 families who have someone who can provide that gift from birth to ceremonies, weddings, every day through when they die, and to give them that gift. And I really think that is a really important part of my role in being here on the planet. And I had some really amazing teachers, Winnie the Prairie and Wendy and Karen Savage, who always were very giving to me, and would, even today I could call them and they would share anything that they could with me. And I always took that to mean that that was part of my responsibility, to pass that gift on. And initially, a lot of people would say, like, oh, you're going to work your way out of a job. And I remember thinking that I hope so. I hope that eventually my role will be obsolete, that there'll be so many makers that it won't even be necessary anymore. That would be really the goal for me. And so that's what I was doing probably about 7 years ago, when I was contacted by Louis Gong, who was starting a company called 8th Generation in Seattle. And he wanted to start an Inspired Natives project, which was a business capacity project for Native artists, because there's tons of Native artists, but not very many Native business people, even though bartering and, creating is so much a part of who we've always been. And so what he had really saw was that there's all these non-Native companies, right, making money off pseudo Native art or taking advantage of Native artists. And when he wanted to work with me, I was so excited, because as a moccasin maker, and I think also like as Anishinaabe, we have always adorned our life with beauty and what we saw around us. So we have always decorated everything in our everyday, from our shoes to our houses to everything is beautiful. And that's just a part that really works for me. And so the idea of getting to make products and getting to make eventually what became blankets and homewares and everything out of our design, our aesthetic, was so exciting to me, and just super logical, and also really value the way that we adapt as Anishinaabe. So I was just really excited about that. And I think from the beginning, I think Louis had his eye on wool blankets, because blankets, not only for us as Indigenous people, but are really like this pinnacle gift. It's like the gift you give at like this really profound moments in people's lives. And for the last 130 years or so, give or take, and longer in some companies, non-Native companies have been taking what they interpret as Native art and selling that, and really making a multi-million-dollar legacy off of stolen Native art. And most of us can look at, if we think of like Native art or a blanket, we think of like these sort of geometric designs, these sort of pan-Indian designs that we've been socialized to really think like, oh, that's what a wool blanket is. And what's interesting is even it's so effective that even some people will use the word Pendleton and wool blanket as if they're synonymous. So that's how powerful that appropriation was. And companies like Pendleton have been sued and successfully for mislabeling their own products. And so I think Louis had his eye on that right away. And when he was like, do you want to be a part of this? I was like, yes, absolutely. I like ran upstairs and like literally jumped and like clicked my heels, because I was so excited. I love the idea of us being able to take back our own economic sovereignty, taking back our own stories, and attaching our art back, like taking our art back and those stories being reconnected to it. So I was really excited about that from the beginning. And I started doing, we designed earrings and we did some clothing. And then when it was just time to design a blanket, I really thought, oh my gosh, this is a big deal. This is like this like permanent thing that will be a part of people's lives. And I thought about all the things that were happening in our communities, and anybody who works within the Native community knows that we have pretty much every epidemic, right, addiction, depression, diabetes. I mean, you name it, we kind of got it, right? But on the flip side of that, I should be advancing these slides, but I have not been. So anyways, here's a few slides that I didn't advance through. I'm gonna go through here. Okay. I'm gonna keep going because I screwed that up. And and so when I got this chance to design this blanket, I thought, what do I see the people around me doing? What is the amazing work that is happening? And I was thinking about, there's so many people that are doing language revitalization, cultural revitalization, really incredible work around protecting water, and people connecting back to ceremony, like all these amazing things that are happening. And I was like, that's the story that I want to tell in my art. And what I was told about our art and our designs was that they were meant to remind us about foods, medicines, and things for our good life, especially during a time when we weren't allowed to talk about those medicines. They were put, our ancestors put those in their art to remind us of that. And I love that we've always used these like memory devices. And so I was like, oh, this is this great opportunity. And so I was like, okay, I want to talk about the wild rice, because of course our beloved wild rice is just this incredible indicator of the ecosystem. It's an indicator of how good we're doing. It's kind of an indicator of everything, right? And then I put the strawberry kind of on everything. And even the name of my business is Heartberry, because in our language, the word odamen is heartberry, and that means literally a heart berry. And there's all kinds of beautiful stories and lessons in like leading from your heart, and lots of tribal traditions too, stories about strawberries. And really is this symbol that like I think really resonates across so many different traditions. And the little swirly parts on it are fiddleheads. And if you've ever been out in the woods in the spring and you see the little fiddlehead is growing up, they're a really great food source, but also as they grow, they become ferns, which become an important part of our ceremonial life also. And then on my beadwork, I always put these little dots, and the little dots for me were always to represent the muskrat's paws. And I won't elaborate too much on that story, but just to say that it's a very important animal in our stories, and really a humble creature that's very profound. And then at the center of this design is a dogwood flower. And this flower is something you'll see in Ojibwe beadwork, Ojibwe design all over the place. And people are always drawn back to this design over and over. And the idea for me was like at the center of so much of our work, so much of all what we're doing should be our thoughtfulness or our intention or prayer, if however you do that, because that's what dogwood flower is, one of the plants you can use to make traditional sema or tobacco for prayer. And when, we look at designs that are taken or sort of pseudo native art, pan-Indian art that there's no artist designed to, part of what happens and part of what is lost in that is that art, the story is gone. Who is the person? When I look at some of these beautiful blankets that are beautiful designs, like who is the person whose art that is? What's the story behind it? Like, I want to know what the story was there. And so I really love to be a part of this ability we have to take back our stories, to take back our commerce, and to be a part of changing the way that we do business as Native people. And so it's really been quite a ride. I've got to design like 8 different wool blankets and tons of other products, and get to adapt and just constantly innovate and shift inside of that. And that's been probably like that's kind of like 1/3 that, 1/3 cultural art classes. And it's super fun to see the Skakune as they're teaching in class, because those are really the really profound like roots of what we're doing. And I was asking about, well, why would you want me to come here and talk to your to the folk school, and thinking about like when we're doing cultural art and connecting and creating these spaces. These aren't like, a make or take night. These are, what we're doing is coming into space. We're doing like heart restoration work. We're doing building back into ourselves the things that have been taken, and as a result of the boarding school era, and a result of colonialism. And so when we're making these kinds of spaces, that's the kind of heart work that we're doing. And so when we think about like what's appropriate and what's not appropriate, is, we have a lot of non-Native family members, community members who are a part of our spaces. And I think we invite them to be a part of those spaces and welcome them in those spaces. And I think that we want to support and we want to have these conversations. But what's not appropriate is for like a non-Native person to come into one of our classes and then they become the expert on Ojibwe moccasins. They take up that space. And so there's a difference between supporting Native art, supporting Native artists, and taking space away from Native artists. And it's really cool to me to watch. Like right now, I'm like watching this class and seeing how this space that is there, this space is created, this space is being used by Native artists, supporting Native artists, doing that cultural revitalization work. Like that's part of how we support Native artists. But also alongside with that is that, Heartberry, and the way that I always talk about it, is contemporary Ojibwe design for all. And that what I'm designing and creating and putting out into the world on a marketplace, on a website, are really things that I've decided, along with my mentors and my teachers, is appropriate for everyone to have. And I'm sure that other Native artists are doing that thoughtful work too, is that knowing that if there's something is, that what's appropriate or not appropriate, like let's say for Biskakwane or his partner to decide like what's appropriate for someone else to have, that's their decision. So what we as Native people get to decide what is appropriate for non-Native people to have and to be a part of. That's our decision to make, right? So knowing that if I'm putting something on my website, that means it's appropriate for you to have. But there's nothing on there that's ceremonial or and so I think like having these kind of conversations and these kind of like the fact that people are thinking about this is really important. And I'm really glad to be able to like have this space to think about this, because for so long we kind of just thoughtlessly been in a space where everyone loves Native art. I think most people can disagree. It's beautiful. Everyone wants to have it. And just really think about, where are we getting it from? Who is selling it? Who is benefiting from it? And really, there's so many great Native companies now that are coming up, that are being a part of the marketplace, that we are the answer to appropriation. That when you're supporting a Native artist, when you're buying from Native artists, I mean, just put it so bluntly, like putting your cash into a Native company, that's you supporting Native artists. Like that's you supporting Native businesses. And that's us being like entrepreneurial in a way that we have always been. And so really just excited. It's so cool to see this class happening. It's so cool to see you all at the North House Folk School and being a part of that space. And so I would really like to spend most of the time answering questions and talking about what it is that you all want to talk about and want to know about and be thinking about. So I am wondering if we can go to the questions or chat, or if anybody in the Moccasin class wants to throw a question my way. It looks like they're eating.
Okay, Sarah, bonjour, this is Greg.
Sure.
Good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you too.
So in the beginning of what you were saying in your introduction, can you please tell our visitors why we address ourselves the way we do? Why it's important?
Oh, cool. Well, I will tell you that I do it because people like Dan Jones and them and Neeb Abed all told me that I should. So, our language is a gift, and I'm a learner, and I think the little bit that I can do, I should always do, and I should always and also, and this is me speaking for myself, I think it's important to take up space with our own language, even if it makes people like maybe they don't know what I'm saying, maybe I'm not saying it very good. It's still super important and profound to try. And I know that also, like around me, I'm being listened to, and I know that I want them to know that I'm here and be able to understand me. So that's why I do it. I'm curious, why do you introduce yourself that way?
Same reason. My elders usually give me a lot of grief if I don't do it that way. And so I think that's universal for all of us. But introducing yourself is a big part of who we are. And it gets everything out of the way when we do it that way. We tell them who we are, we talk from our heart, and we say those things. We let them know that, you know, I have this English name, but I also have this Ojibwe name. And where I come from matters because it has a French name, but it also has an Ojibwe name, and that Ojibwe name is older than America. And so it's not my job, it's the visitors' jobs to learn, because I can say Jim. And we had a conversation, I had a conversation the other day on the phone with a guy that wants to do an interview. And he said, how do I say your name? And he was like murdering it over and over again. And I said, hey, I can say Jim. You need to make time to learn how to say my name, or I don't want to do this interview. So, you know, that's important, is to be that way, stand your ground and to represent who you are and where you come from. That's why it's important that we say that. Sorry, that's my 2 cents.
I asked you. That's good.
Greg,
Thank you.
do you want to jump in and just show what you're working on and tell us a little bit about your class?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are working on winter moccasin class here at the North Pole Coast. And we have a great crew here today. Everybody say hi. Hey. And so this is the style that we're making. You take a look at it. They're high top winter wraps, and they're some of them are trimmed with otter, and we have some leather trim. We have mink. We have rabbit. We have all these amazing animals that we're trimming our moccasins with. But this is a style that a lot of people want all over. You see, there's a big craze on the internet right now with people wanting these. It's been that way for a number of years. But like Sarah was saying, you know, there's a lot of appropriation of our styles and whatever. And so what happens is you get these pan-Indian kind of styles that are somehow that became a representative, like she was talking about the blankets, they became an idea of who we are as Anishinaabe people. But North Pole Coast, they opened up the doors and said, hey, we don't want to be that way. We want to bring you in and share what you know from your skill set. And so, you know, hats off to North Pole Coast for that. And they have a lot of questions they want to ask. A lot of the people here, the visitors, ask questions like, I don't want to be this way, but I want to do the right thing. We had a conversation this morning with one of our students, you know, what's right and what isn't, you know, and that's important. And these are the kinds of classes, these are the kinds of places where we can make this happen. And so, you know, there's a lot of different styles of moccasin, but these are the ones that we're focusing on today. We have some wraps that a couple of our students are doing. And, you know, these are just a functional pair, you know, some people will put them on a shelf, but we tell them, make sure you wear them, you know, because these are made to be worn, not to be as functional art. And so my partner, Alex, she designed the florals that go on the ear. And then we kind of teamed up and offered this class, and we're here today, and everybody's working so hard. We have a lot of undersigned moccasin makers, and they're just doing such a beautiful, amazing job. And yeah, that's kind of what we're up to over here in Grand Marais.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. So it's been so fun. It's a 5-day class, and it takes a lot of time to make all that happen. So Sarah, we've got a few more, actually a lot of questions coming in. Several people wondering if we can go back to the images that we kind of rushed through, if you can talk a little bit about those.
I have to just stress out that I couldn't figure out the last minute my transition thing. And I was like, oh, whoops, tick, 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 tick. So that is totally yes.
Awesome. You'll have to reshare your screen. I had to move things around so we could see the Moccasin class happening.
Oh my gosh, it's always some crazy thing that will happen.
I know, Zoom.
And it all went away, didn't it? Yep, it did. Oh, it will come back.
No worries. Is that the blanket that you were showing us in the background there?
Yep. All right, here we go. All right. No, I gotta do that again. Tech giants.
I know. Oh, wait, there we go.
Okay. So this was my first slide. I like to just talk and not really follow.
It's great. This is just fine.
This was my Heartberry slide because of the heart and the berry and the strawberry. What I come from is like really a beadwork background, and I really love what I love about our particularly Ojibwe style beadwork is a lot of it is really beautiful colors like layered on black, and a lot of times it's velvet. What I was told about the black was that those Jesuit cloaks, those long Jesuit cloaks that they used to have, that they would throw those out and people would take that fabric and reuse it. And I love the idea of that, because it's like taking this really hurtful relationship of the church to our community, and then putting this beautiful thing on this really like hurtful garment. And I was like, wow, that is really beautiful and deep, and I love that. And the word in our language for beadwork is manadum, which means like a little spirit. Like manadum is like a little spirit. And so I think that when our beadwork, what I love about it is you can see like that energy in it when it's against that black like that. You're like, oh yes, I love that energy. And so, and it's real classic Ojibwe style to have like 2 layers, like one color, another color kind of close to it. And that subtle transition on the black is kind of a classic Ojibwe style. This is 8th generation who I had talked about. This is my mentor, Louis Gong, and he really started from his kitchen and built it into probably the largest native company in the United States. So I've gotten to be a part of that journey, and has been so amazing and super exciting. So he's got a big team now, big warehouse, and it's very exciting. Oh, obviously should have talked about this. I mean, I was talking about this, but so the whole tagline behind the Inspired Natives Project is the idea of I support inspired natives, not native inspired. So when you see a product and it says native inspired, that's your cue to let you know probably a native person did not make that and is not benefiting from it. And you can always, when you're working with it, looking at a product or something, email that company and say, hey, are you a native owned company? Because I can tell you for sure, any native person who owns a company is going to respond and say, yes, I'm from da, 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 da. We have no problem. We are very happy to be native companies. If that company doesn't want to tell you, then that's your cue that maybe you need to do a little more research. So if you want to be a conscious consumer, knowing that any native company is going to be stoked to tell you about their where they're from, who their community is. You're never going to hear us hiding it. So that's something that if you're kind of wondering how you can just sift that out, I would just email the company and say, hey, so are you a native owned company? Legally, they got to tell you. So. And these are my staff. And so I started out, in my kitchen, and now I have 2 staff people, which is really exciting, and get to really support our community. And I think that's the thing, when you support like small companies and native companies, people know that money just goes right back into your community in a way that obviously doesn't when you're working with big giant corporation. I actually did a conversation about cultural appropriation at the Portland Art Museum, and the CEO of Pendleton came, and I was like, oh, hello, we're going to talk about you today. And it was like really scary, kind of funny, a little bit scary though. So that was pretty interesting. Oh yeah, and the other thing I wanted to talk about relationship to our art is how we can use our art in our work around social justice. And so really try to use a lot of my work around issues of missing and murdered Indigenous women and raising money for organizations that do that work. Last year, I actually worked with a soccer organization. We raised $8,000 for the Minnesota Indian Women's Sexual Assault Coalition, and they started a survivors fund. So it's really cool, and I love being able to take my art and designs and use those in our, our social justice work is super exciting. Because $8,000, I couldn't even dream of that a few years ago. Like, what, 8,000? Are you kidding me? To buy a car. So it's really great. They were able to create a fund for families and community people who just need a little leg up. So that's pretty cool. Oh, and related to stories, there's so much to talk about. One of the cool things about that, a way you can adapt and take our art and really create new things, is I've gotten to do a lot of art installations over the last few years. And this one I called the Great Rice Race. And if you've ever been out wild ricing, you can hear people like talking, laughing, joking around. And then a lot of these older folks have like these great stories of how they knocked, 300 pounds of rice in their canoe, and everyone's trying to have the most rice they've ever knocked in the canoe. And so this is an art installation I did at the Duluth Children's Museum. And they're kind of having a race. You can't really see the turtle here is racing, and they're trying to see like who can get, the most rice in a day. So I really love just taking what our family does and our way of life, and putting that into other spaces in these really contemporary ways. And that, like, one of the great things about for us as Anishinaabe is we're traditional and we're modern. We're all of those things, and I love to be able to be a part of that. And so these are some of the work that I have done both with 8th Generation and on my own, just really like showing how we use talking about wild rice, talking about and turn those traditional ways of life into really contemporary things that people just want to wear and just want to have as part of their life every day. And so that's always a super fun thing to get to do. And then we like it. So yeah. Good question. I mean, that was the question, but yeah.
Great. Yeah. Let's see, a couple more questions coming in. It's so interesting to hear you reflect on traditional and contemporary, and how that sometimes can get set up as like you're either one or the other. And I had an opportunity to visit a museum in Oslo, and one of the curators there just happened to mention it. Somebody said, "Oh, is that design traditional?" And she just looked and said, "Oh, what year did tradition stop? I don't know." I thought, oh, right. That's true of cultural art and craft kind of from any place. Like there isn't a spot at which our stories of people walking on the earth aren't important anymore, which I think really can be liberating in terms of how you choose to approach craft as a maker now. Let's see. Lots of good questions. You talked a little bit about stories, histories, and values embedded in designs. A couple people are curious about the blankets behind you.
Oh yeah. Well, so this actually was fun today. I was actually making this bag out of a blanket. So I cut up a blanket, a wool blanket, and made a couple bags out of it, which was super fun. And so that's what this is right here. These are some of my family's moccasins, nice and dirty and worn out. And so this is a bag that I made out of a blanket, which was really fun. And then these are cotton blankets that I've done with 8th generation. So I have some of the similar designs of like bloodroot and like this tulip shape. What I really love to do is look at like old scientific drawings and kind of like geek out on looking at old drawings. And you'll notice that plants, when you really look at them, so many plants have this shape. A maple bud has this shape. Wild rice, even in a certain part, has a shape like that. So there's this tulip shape you see a lot in beadwork. And sometimes I think it's tulips, but also it can be all kinds of other animals in their budding stage. The other cool thing you'll see in a lot of Ojibwe beadwork is like these little, like a bulb on a bulb on a bulb on a bulb. And if you look at any plant in the springtime, that's exactly what it looks like. It's like bloop, 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 bloop. So I think about like what were we looking for when we knew it was time to tap our trees? What were we looking for when we knew like all the different indicators of the seasons are it's so interesting to look at all the plants and all their different stages. And when you look at our designs and our beadwork, you start to see that like, oh, that's what that is. That's what's happening there. So these are my cotton blankets that I did with 8th generation, which is for fun. So yeah, well, product placement. That's what they call it. I'm a shameless hustler. Let me tell you.
I just dropped a link to your website and store in the chat there, so everybody can go do their last minute Valentine's Day shopping or any other shopping you may need to do. There's so much beautiful stuff there. A couple of questions, just a little bit about how you approach the business side of things, like where you source materials from and how you think about being a business person and balanced with being an artist.
Do you want me just to answer that general or do you? Oh, okay.
Yep, I'll follow up. I'm just finding it was in here in the chat, and so I'm gonna look for the specifics, but that's kind of the,
so,
yeah. How did you advocate for yourself? Did you hire a lawyer?
No. So someone said to me the other day, like, oh, when you were in business school, and I was like, dude, I have not been to business school. I'm like really an artist, but I've always been entrepreneurial since I was a kid. Like I used to find lost dogs and return them to people because I knew that they would like give me $5 or whatever. So I've been hustling since I was a little kid. But and I think I'm just a naturally entrepreneurial. And I think too, as Native people, a lot of times we get the message that maybe we aren't entrepreneurs. But I think it's like rethinking that we can still do business in a way that is in line with our own value systems. And it takes a lot of pause and a lot of like, So like, for example, I was working with Duluth Pact for a while, and then they had Ivanka Trump at their factory. And I was just like, nope. And I had like $10,000 worth of inventory that I pulled because I was like, I can't be in line with that. Like I in my heart just doesn't feel good about it. So I think there's ways as business people that we can still do business and feel good about it, and also prosper and feel good about that. Like we as Native people should feel good about being able to make a living, make ends meet, and take care of our kids and pay for college. Like we should feel good about that. And I think like we have to kind of reframe that too, even within our own community. And so and so as far as like products and whatever, a lot of like probably half the products I do, I work with 8th generation. So a lot of like my earrings and stuff are made right there in their studio. And then probably in half of the other products are made in factories. So it kind of depends. And then a lot of, as much as I can, like a lot of my printed stuff is done right in Duluth or embroidered right here in Duluth. Working with a printer and embroidery right in Duluth. So kind of depends. It's kind of a mix.
Great. That's really interesting insight into how you think about this. Here's a question. I took a moccasin class at North House from Marcy McIntyre, who shared her culture with us as she taught. Marcy has taught here basically since the school started. The student asks, as a non-native person, is it appropriate for me to use native designs in art I make for myself, but not to sell?
I would say if Marcy taught you how to do that, then it's appropriate for you to make that for yourself, for your family, because Marcy taught you that. I think for me, where it gets prickly is, are you going to become the expert? Are you going to get grants? Are you going to take up space that a native artist could be in? So that is the place where I feel like it is not appropriate, is, are you becoming the expert then? And that I don't think is comfortable. I think if, and I think that it's always good if she wants to talk to Marcy about that. I think it's good. Go back to whoever your teacher was and ask, like, where's the line for this? Like, but I think like Marcy taught her that, then it's probably okay for her to make that for herself of what Marcy taught her. That's my opinion. I'm curious if Biscockbene has thought about that.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, Sarah. What we do is we rely on the knowledge of the teachers that taught us those things. And not only that, but we have to tell where we get these things from. We always have to tell that story. So if we have a visitor coming into our class, and, we want them to reference us, and then we reference our teachers, and it goes all the way back that way. And so, that's probably one good thing that she can do is pursue Marcy and say, do I have permission? And because that's where it comes from. It comes from Marcy and all her trials and errors. And so I think that's very important to address it that way. I totally 100% agree with that.
The other thing, is interesting, I think, within for non-native people or native people, is that human connection and desire for culture is a human desire. And so what I usually try to challenge people is to think about your own cultural tradition. Where is your family from? Where are your ancestors from? And what is the cultural art from that space? Because that's where that really heart work is, and really is like, I think that indication of like, oh, I need something. I'm looking for something. And like, what is that? And like, seek that out for yourself. Because I know for me, this is where I'm a learner, and this is where I found that connection and that like fullness was in this space. And so I think like it's important for people to reflect on, why do I have this need for this, and where am I really going to find it? And that's kind of where I push people to a little bit. So yeah, good question though.
Great. We are coming to the close of our time together. I think we have covered most of the questions folks had, specifically about where to find your products. I dropped a link in the chat. I dropped a link to 8th Generation as well, another great source. Let's see, anybody down there have anything they want to add from the moccasin makers, or any questions?
They're busy.
They are busy. All right. Well, a huge thank you to you, Sarah, and to you, Ms. Kakone, and the rest of the moccasin class for joining us. To everybody who's been able to take a little lunch break with us today, we are so appreciative of your willingness to share your knowledge and your culture and your thoughts around the work that you're doing and the role of places like North House and folks who are interested. So I encourage everybody to check out heartberry.com and to keep learning and asking questions. We will post a link to the recording of this, most likely for at least a couple of weeks, on our website, which is northhouse.org. So if you jumped on late or want to share it with someone, you'll be able to do that here, give us about 24 hours or so to get that link up. Otherwise, I am really excited to hear or to see hopefully more of you next week. Our first webinar next week is on Thursday evening. I forgot to mention this one at 7 p.m. And it is with a group that works with Mayan women in Guatemala to help make their products available to consumers in the US. They do incredible rug hooking, in which they are using Mayan design motif, but using sort of recycled t-shirts and things. So it's a really interesting partnership. Encourage people to check out that. And then 8 o'clock on Friday morning from Kyrgyzstan about Kyrgyz rug felting. Links to all of those Zoom to register are on our website. And I think that's what I'm going to leave you with today. Thanks to everybody for being here. Thanks again, Sarah. We really appreciate your time.
Yeah, miigwech bezndawieg. Thank you for listening.